What's up, everyone? Welcome to the 52nd episode of the Balanced Business Podcast. That means we have officially crossed the 1 year mark. Team, how exciting is today?
Cool that we've done this for a year. Yeah.
It's weird to think about. We've come so far. So, with this annual, I don't even know, christening, I know we have a very special topic today. So, Justine, what's going on? What are we talking about?
Today we're talking about what to do when you have a lead who is interested, but you haven't yet gotten them on a call or you haven't yet signed, they haven't yet signed with you. So we're going to talk about how to keep that conversation going and kind of what those messages might look like to keep them interested, frequency of those messages, and then how to use automation to make this process a little bit easier. So I don't know where you guys want to start with that, but yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I'll intro it because I know Larissa has many thoughts when it comes to at least the automation side. So, most likely, when you are working with someone, right? Like you or deciding to work with someone, and you've gotten through the pitch, you understand like their problem, and you've built like a mechanism to help. Then this weird like period happens where it's like they say they're interested, or they've shown interest, and you've probably come up, I always talk about pricing on the very first call. So you probably talked about pricing and scope and all that. And you're waiting, and you're like, I hope they're gonna sign. And then like a couple days go by, and you get anxious, and you want to follow up, but you don't know what to say. And then usually, if you don't put in any work or hear from them within a week, you have that sinking feeling like they're not ever gonna sign. And maybe they do, maybe they don't. But that's what that problem is. Like we want to eliminate as much of that uncertainty as possible. So, Larissa, talk to us about like because I know you've been working on that a lot this week. So talk about like what what we do, what you've seen work, and then we can go into more of like the back end strategies.
Yeah, of course. So, when it comes to like if you've got a lead interested but not yet on the call to keep the conversation going and to really keep them interested, I mean, the messages you send and the frequency you send will certainly depend on the business you're in and the niche you're in. Some will have some impact on like if you have a really long sales cycle, like just naturally, you don't necessarily need to be following up with those leads every day, especially if it has to go through a long, let's say like legal process or something like that, some sort of due diligence that has to happen before you can sign with anybody. Um, Keep in mind those types of agreements and things along those lines are going to just take longer. So you don't need to be following up like every single day because their answer every day is going to be like, legal has it. There's not much we can do. And that's sort of something to just kind of keep in mind. But understanding the sales cycle overall that you have, you do want to make sure you're following up pretty frequently. And one thing we always recommend to do is to have automated follow-up sequences in place to be checking in on, especially like contracts that have been sent but not signed, um, and just general agreements to make sure that like A, you're staying top of mind, and B, you are like very accessible to any questions or concerns they may have. That's a really common thing in like many sales processes. And again, it will vary somewhat by industry, but when people are not interested, they'll kind of just ghost. And that's one thing to kind of keep in mind that like that is really common for like if you send out 10 contracts, you're almost definitely not getting all 10 of those signed. And that's just sort of how it is. But if you're following up with those leads, and especially if you're doing it consistently, if they have a concern or if they have a question, by having those follow-ups and ideally automated follow-ups, you can make sure that you are, really just accessible to address those concerns before they get to the point where they're just like, you know what? No, I'm just ghosting. Like, I'm not going to address this. It's also, it's harder to ghost somebody who's really consistent about following up with you. Um, if they follow up 2 days ago and they follow up today and they follow up 2 days from now without any response, that is going to reflect well on the people who are following up and not so well on the people who aren't getting back. So it's one of those kind of almost more like psychological things, but you can definitely use tools of automation to be sending follow up, let's say like emails, phone calls, texts, Facebook, wherever you are interacting with these leads, you can set up automated follow-up sequences to make sure you're interacting with them consistently.
Yeah, and I totally introduced the topic wrong. So I was thinking like more of the follow-up after like after they've already expressed a lot of passion. But to Larissa's point too, I mean, one of the biggest things that we've noticed too, at least from a sales process, is like think about when you get a contract, right? For anything, is your initial thoughts, even if the conversation was amazing, you think that there's going to be something in there that, as a wasn't discussed or an added fee. So you always have to think about the person on the other end when they're getting this contract or agreement or whatever. Like they have fear, right? That's a huge trust, right? It's one thing to say you're going to work with someone, and another thing to put your money towards that. So part of what Lewis is talking about with the follow-ups too is like it doesn't necessarily just have to be like, hey, did you see this? I like to sprinkle in, and this is where automation works really well to enable you, but like I like to add that personal touch in there. I like to reference something that we did on the sales call or a specific goal that they had in mind. Let's say that they really like need help defining a niche, right? I want to bring that up with maybe a couple of niches that we discussed, because that just adds a little bit of more personality to the conversation. And maybe that's not like a direct like automation, but it's more of, hey, um, was like let's say your CRM pings you to send something like this. It's still automated because you're not actively thinking about it, but the way you approach it could be a lot more human. And I like to do especially like phone calls. I know that a lot of people don't like to do that, but I like to actually give people calls and go over the contract with them, answer any questions they have, because sometimes it's the smallest like word or phrase that might be holding them up. So I mean, throughout the whole process, whether it's, the lead's somewhat interested to closing a deal, using automation as an asset to work for you, both in, like you don't have to say you type out like any questions or anything like that, but reminding yourself to be human throughout the process is going to dramatically increase your closing rate, as well as even if you don't close them right now, the way they feel about you. So just wanted to add that 2 cents in there is you can use automation to also like help you on like reminding you to do certain things, phone calls, texts, voicemails, stuff like that. So
Yeah, for sure. And that's a good point. Like, not everything needs to be a fully automated message, but you can still utilize automation and things to make sure you don't let it fall through the cracks. You can set reminders for yourself. Oftentimes, in many softwares that let's say you can send automated emails or texts out through, you can either add tasks or add manual messages that need to be sent that will just need like manual approval before sending. Um, those are the types of things that are really valuable to do to ensure somebody does kind of get across the finish line.
yeah, absolutely. And I think I mean this I know we're talking about more so follow up to, before they sign, but even after they sign, right? Like using that automation to remind you to follow up. Like that's what I did today, right? We launched someone on Monday and I followed up with them today, 3-minute call, and we're gonna have a testimonial next week. And I got that scheduled because I was just, asking, hey, how's the quality of the leads? What else can we do to be helpful? And the only reason I did that is because my CRM reminded me to do so. So it wasn't really like, could I have remembered? Yes. Am I still a nice guy? Yes. But I just use technology to help. So even after the sales process happens, those reminders are helpful. Justine, I saw that you unmuted yourself. Did you have any questions or feedback?
Yeah, can we kind of talk about what softwares we actually use in our processes, and kind of what our automation processes look like a little bit more?
We'll say our tech stack right now is a little tricky because we're kind of transitioning from others to we're moving into GHL, Go High Level, just to kind of have this all centrally done in a single place. Other softwares we've used that we've really liked have been Instantly, which we'll continue using for cold email outreach, but a lot of our CRM activity is through Close, close.io, I think. And we have some things set up through Airtable as well, although Airtable is more so like for database management. The CRM that we've been using, Close, is more for like actually getting these reminders and getting these messages auto sent out. So that's kind of the tech stack we use. Although, like I said, we're moving to GHL. because we've been using it for some other clients. We really like it, and it has the ability to do, like I said, all of these things in one place in just a way that's a little bit easier to manage than having kind of piecemeal systems built out in like multiple different softwares.
Yeah, and I think to the tool set, because Larissa and I have been talking a lot this week about like systems and backend. Don't rely too much on what the fancy tool is, right? So we mentioned Go High Level, we use Airtable, we use a lot of software, but like it doesn't really matter what software you use. It matters on like how what your flow is and what tools would get you mostly there, where you can add something in there, right? Add instead of having like three different softwares, one for CRM, one for an email tool, and all this like random stuff. Figure out like what you need and what software can get you mostly there, and then add on like extensions, maybe through Zapier or something like that. Because we've just seen people do a lot, like get all the software they can, and you probably don't need that all because it turns out to be this like huge mess, and most likely the solution that you're trying, or the thing that you're trying to solve is pretty simple. Like maybe it's, how do I get a contract signed and then automatically onboard that person to my course or something like that, right? It's probably simpler than needing like six softwares to make it happen. You might need six softwares, but I mean the solution is really where software can shine, because we've seen it time and time again. People just buy software just for a great sales pitch or something like that when they don't really need it, or they don't really use it, or they use it for like a month and then never use it again. So that's just one thing to keep in mind with backend software, is like you just don't want to get something that you're just not going to use. Hashtag
Yeah.
we're fighting with someone about that right now. So but I mean, to that point, like I've been a huge fan of like Close for as a CRM for like ever. Instantly for software for emails, like, but at the end of the day, like you might not need those once some like a product switches, or like fees become crazy. So but the ones I use mostly every single day is Close, Still, GHL. Those are, and Slack. I mean, you can't get wrong with Slack, but that doesn't really help you on the sales channel. So
Yeah.
Well, any other advice or anything you want to give to people trying to figure out their follow-up process or getting people to sign more frequently?
One of the things I would definitely advise is to really go through and fully map out what does the customer journey look like in every stage. So mean like, how does it look like for them to go from, let's say, a completely cold lead to a warm lead? How does it look like once they've become a warm lead? So in this case, let's just say like after they've met with you, then what does that follow-up sequence need to look like? Then how do we follow up with those people? Then how do they move into a contracting stage where you send out a contract, and again, you're going to be following up until that gets signed? Then how do you move them from a signed contract into properly onboarding? And then how do you move them from onboarding to ongoing service, if that's kind of your model, or move them from onboarding to completed? And how does that customer journey look? What does communication look like from your end to them, to make sure that you're maintaining a high level of professionalism, that you're not falling off the map anywhere? Like, how can you do this in a way that represents your business in a way that you want? And map that all out, whether it's on pen and paper, or you can use system like for free. You can use, let's say, like Funnelytics, or I know a lot of people use a ton of other different software for kind of mapping things out. But you could even just in a Google Doc create a list of like, customer is in this stage, this is the communication, this is the frequency, this is when, maybe if they respond, we stop communication, things like that. You want to make sure that you're keeping note of, and that is really clear to you as an entity, like sending things out, that you understand how do you want to represent yourself, and with that, what communication do you want to make sure gets done? And be realistic about it as well. Like, do you need to follow up with every single lead every single day? No. you do not. And in a lot of cases, that may hurt you. So just be realistic about what is reasonable for your sales cycle, for your business, for your structure, for the contracts that you're doing. And maybe it looks different for some contracts other than others. If you have multiple different like service offerings, consider how this might look different for service offering A versus service offering B. And like I said, really mapping that out is probably the most important step. The software you get it set up in, I mean, that's personal preference, but it's more of a question of like how do you actually write that out, and what are the words that needs to be, or what needs to be communicated in those messages. That's the important part, is really just getting it mapped out.
Yeah, I think for me the only like not caveat, but is like it's okay to also do it like manually until you have something proven and then add automation to it. Because let's say you're doing prospecting, right? You might not want to add like a lot of like, software and complexity before you really get like your numbers, right? Like so let's say that your numbers are I don't know, like for every 100 people you reach out to, 20 of them respond and one of them turns into a like a like a a call, right? Since you know that, then if you want 10 calls, you have to reach out to 1,000 people, but you have to first understand like what that number is, because automation is really good at doing the work, but if the work isn't yielding the results that you want, then it doesn't really matter how much automation you add to it, because it's just not gonna fulfill what you need it to fulfill. So, any closing remarks or anything like that?
Um, Mostly just that automation is your friend, but like I said, take a deep look at how you want your business to be represented and what makes sense for you. Map it all out, and then get it set up so that nothing falls through the cracks, whether that's manual or automated.
Correct. Well, guys, thank you so much for the 52 amazing episodes. I'm super, super pumped for the next 52. A lot of changes coming, which is awesome. Yeah, I'm just really excited for what's to come. And yeah, team, like let's rock and roll. You guys have a fantastic rest of your day. If you have any questions, email me at nico@boundlessmedia.com. Social, we're Get Boundless Media all over the place: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere except TV. Hopefully, guys, you have an amazing rest of your day, and we'll talk real soon. Peace.